Hey friends, Kelly here. Thanks for joining me today. As promised, I am back with my first process video as a Hip Kit Club Design team member. I am so excited. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into the layout. As you can see, I have a bold blue pattern paper that I am going to be using as my background. And all of the products that I'm going to be using today are from the September kits. And that blue pattern paper is from the Maggie Holmes Gather collection, and it is included in the main kit. And my theme for today is focus on the story. And if you watched my chit chat video that I posted on Sunday, then you know I tend to not journal on a lot of my layouts. So knowing that my theme was focus on the story, I knew that I needed to have a way to make sure that I had room for journaling when my layout was finished. So I thought using the Project Life cards would be a perfect way to make sure that I had a spot left once I had the design complete to put my journaling. Okay, so let's take a moment to talk about my photo since my theme is focused on the story. This photo was taken with my phone, and I typically don't take a lot of photos with my phone. They're not the best quality, but this photo was kind of taken on the fly. I took it right after my son had lost his first tooth, and he actually lost 2 teeth within a matter of minutes of each other. And I knew that I needed to get a picture of his toothless grin. I was so excited when he lost the tooth. They had been loose for a really long time. In fact, they fell out while he was eating ice cream. So that goes to show you how loose they really were. And because I don't journal a lot on my layouts, I knew that I wanted to use some embellishments to help enhance the journaling. So I thought I was going to use those large wood veneer pieces from the Dear Lizzie Saturday collection that are included in the Project Life kit. But I struggled trying to make them work just because of their size. So I ended up not using them, but I really like how they look, and I really like that they would have helped enhance the journaling and really brought attention to the story. So I've started embellishing the layout. I added a floral from the Maggie Holmes Gather ephemera pack that's included in the main kit to the top right part of my photo mat. And I wanted to include another floral pretty much the same size and the same color to the bottom left just to add some symmetry to the layout. So I fussy cut one of the florals from one of the pattern papers that's included in the main kit. So I'm going to build up that cluster a little bit more on the bottom left using pieces from the ephemera pack and then also fussy cut pieces. I'm going to play around with those wood veneer pieces a little bit more, trying to figure out a spot to make them work. I really like that they would have helped with the journaling and helped with the story. But like I said, they were just a little too large and I had a hard time making them fit. I did tuck one of the ephemera pieces from the Posh, Simple Stories Posh collection that is included in the Project Life kit right down on the bottom left. I just kind of tucked it under the floral that I fussy cut. Next, I'm going to start working on a title. And when I'm struggling with titles, one of the things that I like to do is I like to look at cut files. I feel like a lot of the times the cut files can help make that easier rather than trying to come up with something on my own. A lot of the time something's already pre-designed that I can use. And I found the perfect cut file. This is one of the August cut files that was designed by Ashley Horton. And I am going to be using that Love You piece and then also the scallop border piece. I am a Cricut Explorer user, and I want to do just a real quick tutorial to show you how you can cut out certain images from a cut file. So that way you don't have to cut the entire cut file. You can just slice out the parts that you want to use. So what I've done there is I already have the cut file on the design screen, and I have inserted a square, and I am just resizing it to fit over that scallop border piece. Once I have it sized correctly, I'm going to select the square, which is now a rectangle, and the cut file, and then I'm going to go over to the layers tab and I'm going to hit the slice button, and that is going to slice out that scallop piece from the cut file and make it completely separate, so then I can cut just the scallop piece rather than having to cut everything that's on the screen there. So in just a moment, you'll see that the scallop border piece is separated from the rest of the cut file. That'll allow me to resize it to the size that I want, and then just to cut out that single image rather than having to cut out, like I said, everything that you see there. So I'm going to drag a box around that rectangle. I no longer need it, so I'm going to delete it off the screen. I'm going to repeat the same process, except this time I'm going to insert a circle and alter the shape to turn it into an oval, and then place it over the Love You. So you can see that the top part of that oval is touching the bottom portion of that arrow. So when I slice out the Love You, it's also going to slice out that part of the arrow, which isn't a big deal. It's easy to fix, it's easy to correct. I obviously don't want to cut out that portion of the arrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the cut file off the screen. I'm done with it. I'm going to go over and select the Love You, and then I'm going to go to the Layers tab and hit the Contour button, and then I'm just going to hover over that portion of the arrow, click on it, and it will remove it from the screen. So my plan is to tuck the Love You underneath my photo mat and use it as my title. So to help me get it sized appropriately, I did measure my photo mat, and I am going to insert a square and resize it to the same size as my photo mat, and that will help me visually see how large I need the cut file to be. So to resize the square, I'm going to go to the Edit tab, click on the little padlock that will allow me to change the shape from a square to a rectangle, and then enter the dimensions of my photo mat. Then I'll drag the Love You over, use the bottom right arrow and drag it until I get it to be the appropriate size. Once you have the images sized correctly, you can just delete the rectangle and then send the cut file to the cutting mat and it's ready to go. So I knew I wanted to add a little texture and a little color to this white cardstock. So while the cut file was still on my cutting mat, I am going to use the Echo Park stencil that is included in the color kit and some white modeling paste. And I'm just going to apply the modeling paste through the stencil to create a little bit of texture onto the cut file. Once I have that the way that I like, I am just going to set it aside to let it dry. I do take my stencil off the paper and I do make sure I clean it because I didn't want the modeling paste to dry on the stencil. So while that's drying, I am going to go back to the layout and work on some embellishing. I did bring in a couple more pieces from the Simple Stories Posh collection, that little dog, and then I guess, is it called a binder clip? It's kind of tucked in right towards the top of my photo. And as you could see, I was still trying to get those wood veneer pieces to work, but it just doesn't end up happening. They're too large. But I do find a couple pieces from the Maggie Holmes Gather ephemera pack. It's the 1 and 2, and I have them tucked in on either side of the photo mat, and they had the word week above them, but I didn't need that on there, so I just trimmed it off. So now I'm bringing in the Gather thicker sheet that is included in the main kit, and I'm just playing around with a couple things, seeing if I can find anything that will work. I do end up using the 1 and 2 included on the thicker sheet, but that comes a little bit later on in the layout. So at this point in the layout, I really start bouncing back and forth between embellishing and the mixed media and the cut file. I know that I want to add some of this grapefruit creamies to the cut file, and it comes dry, so you have to activate it with water. So the longer the water sits, the thicker the paint becomes, and I wanted it to be fairly thick. So I sprayed some water into the paint. I'm going to set it off to the side to allow it to activate, and then I'm going to come back to the layout. I'm going to start adhering some of the embellishments down. In just a moment, you're going to see the cut file reappear. I'm checking to see if the modeling paste is dry. It's not dry, so I'm going to zap it with my heat gun. I told you, I start to go all over the place now. So once that's dry, I'm going to bring in the grapefruit creamies and I'm going to start applying some paint to the cut file just to add some color there. You can really start to see the texture popping off that white cardstock now that I'm adding the paint, and I just really like how that looks. So I do add a couple layers of paint just to get the coverage that I want. Once I'm happy with how it is looking, I'm going to bring in my heat gun just to zap it. You want to make sure that the paper is 100% dry if you're applying any type of wet media to the paper while it's still on your cutting mat. If your paper is still wet when you're trying to pull it away from the cutting mat, there's a very high chance that the paper is going to tear. So I am very gentle, and I take my time as I'm pulling it away from the cutting mat, even though it is 100% dry. So once I have the cut file free from the paper, I am going to punch out the negative pieces. And then once that is done, you'll see that I just tuck it directly underneath my photo mat and it just fits perfectly there. I love that the color matches the pink tassel from the Cute Girl collection from Crate Paper that's included in the embellishment kit. I just love how everything coordinates together so well. So now I'm going to continue to embellish the layout. I am going to bring in the 1 and the 2 from the Maggie Holmes Gather thicker sheet that I was talking about earlier. And I bring in those wood veneer 1 and 2 again. I told you I was desperate to try to make them work. So I do play around with them quite a bit. I'm thinking maybe I can get them to work kind of tucked in off to the side, but they're just too large, and I don't know why I wanted to make them work as badly as I did, but I do decide against it and I pull them back off, and then I do bring in those numbers from the thicker sheet, and I am much happier with how those look. Now I decide that it's time to get my journaling onto the layout, and one of the things that I have been obsessed with recently is my We Are Memory Keepers typecast typewriter. So I did get some smudges from the ribbon on the Project Life card and also on this dog. I did try to feed it through the typewriter with the dog attached to the Project Life card, and it just didn't work out really well. So to help cover up those mistakes, I am just using some white acrylic paint and just lightly placing a whitewash over those areas just to help cover up any smudges that are on the dog and then also on the Project Life card. So I did have a couple typos with the journaling, which isn't a huge deal to me. I just come in with my journaling pen and just write over the areas where there were the typos. I think I had a D instead of an S in an area. And to me, it's not a huge deal. I'm not a perfectionist when it comes to that kind of thing. So I just try to make it work and it ends up being fine. Nobody will ever notice. At least I don't think they will. So I've got my photo adhered to the Project Life card and I am ready to start adhering things down to the layout. So I use a mix of my fine line bottle and then also tape runner adhesive to get this all adhered down. So now I'm looking for a ruler to make sure that I have my photo mat centered on the layout. I am a messy scrapbooker. I tend to throw everything off to the side, so a lot of my stuff gets covered up. So it took me a while to find a ruler to use, but I do find it. I get it all centered up. And like I said, I'm just going to start adhering everything down, tucking everything back in place, getting it right where I want it, and it all comes together really well. This layout did take a little while to put together just because I didn't really have an idea in mind when I sat down to create the layouts, which is typically how I scrapbook. I don't always necessarily have an idea in place. I just kind of go with the flow and pull out what embellishments are going to work and just see how things go together. So now I'm bringing in the scallop border cut file, and I did the same mixed media techniques for that cut file as I did the Love You. So it has the same texture and the same paint color, and it just tucks in real nice right behind the Project Life cards, and I like the little detail that it adds to that area. I do bring in my long reach stapler to attach those tassels. I found that's the easiest way to attach tassels to a page is just to staple them down. A lot of the times liquid adhesive, I have a hard time getting it onto the tassel and still letting the tassel look fringed. I feel like if you put too much liquid adhesive onto that type of embellishment, it kind of clumps it all together and it just doesn't look like it's free flowing on the page. Now I'm going to bring in my fine line bottle, and just to make sure that the cut file is fully adhered and attached to the page, I want to make sure that it's not going to move around. I do also add some liquid adhesive to those thickers, the chipboard pieces there. I find that chipboard doesn't stick very well for very long, so I do like to add some liquid adhesive just to be sure that it is going to stay secured to the page. Now, one thing that I love to use, and I really feel like it can help highlight the story of a layout also, are tiny word stickers. And these gold stickers from the Gather collection are beautiful. They are included in the embellishment kit in the September kits, and I just absolutely love, love, love them. I am going to bring in a few enamel dots, just kind of cluster them in a couple areas on the page, and those are from the Project Life kit. And I love enamel dots. I just love the tiny detail that they add to a layout. And that's going to wrap it up for this layout. I'm going to leave you with some still shots. I will be back every Tuesday with a new process video for the Hip Kit Club, so stay tuned for those. If you have any questions about any of the products or the techniques I use, please feel free to leave a comment below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.